There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from feeling too much. From reacting to everything, to everyone, to every shift in energy in the room. You walk into a conversation and sense tension, so you adjust yourself. Someone criticizes you, and you carry it for hours. Someone's rudeness, silence, or indifference lingers inside you long after they've forgotten. We often assume that reacting is natural, that if something triggers us, we must respond, must explain, must defend, must clarify. But what if your reaction is the very thing draining your power? What if the most powerful move you could make was to pause, to do nothing, and in that stillness, protect your peace? In this video, we'll explore 12 Stoic truths that show you how to stay centered even when the world around you is not. Lessons that will teach you when to walk away, when to stay silent, and when your energy is too sacred to spend. Let's begin. Because the real victory is often not reacting at all. Lesson 1. Not everything deserves a reaction. One of the most exhausting habits we carry is believing we must respond to everything. Every comment, every glare, every passive-aggressive gesture, every perceived slight. We've been conditioned to think that silence is weakness, that non-response means defeat, that if we don't defend ourselves, we're somehow letting others win. But the truth is more nuanced. Often, it is in choosing not to respond that we reclaim our peace and assert our strength. The Stoics were clear on this. Epictetus taught that it's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And those judgments are where most of our reactions are born. We don't get upset because someone said something rude. We get upset because we interpret it as disrespect. We don't feel hurt because someone ignored us. We feel hurt because we believe it means we are unworthy. But what if we learn to observe without assigning meaning, to witness without absorbing? Not everything is about you. Not everything is worth your energy. And, more importantly, not everything is true just because it was said loudly. Imagine your peace as a limited resource. Each time you react to something meaningless, you withdraw from that resource. You spend a little bit of your calm, your focus, your clarity, until suddenly you're bankrupt, agitated, overstimulated, fragile. You snap at people you love. You lose sleep. You can't hear your own thoughts because you've let the noise of others dictate your internal state. This is why learning to pause is powerful. To feel the initial impulse to reply, to defend, to retaliate, and let it pass. To take a breath and realize that just because something disturbed your surface doesn't mean it has to reach your depths. You don't need to fight every fire. Sometimes the strongest act is to walk away with your peace intact. People may call it cold, distant, arrogant even. But that says more about their need for drama than your need for distance. Because when you no longer react, you stop feeding the chaos. And when you stop feeding the chaos, it dies from starvation. You become untouchable, not because you've shut down, but because you've become selective with your energy. This doesn't mean you allow disrespect. It means you understand the difference between something that deserves correction and something that simply isn't worth your time. It means you recognize that your emotional labor is not free, and your peace is not a public playground. So the next time someone throws shade, tests your patience, or tries to pull you into their emotional storm, remember this: you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to match someone's chaos with your fire. You can choose to stay calm, stay still, stay above. Because the most powerful person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who knows that reactivity is a form of slavery, and who chooses freedom instead. Lesson 2. Silence is stronger than words. We live in a world that demands immediate reactions. Social media rewards quick outrage. Conversations are fueled by instant replies. Arguments escalate in seconds. But in this noise-driven world, silence becomes a form of power. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of wisdom. The kind of silence that speaks louder than defense, louder than justification, louder than retaliation. When someone disrespects you, silence doesn't mean approval. It means you are so rooted in your value that you don't need validation through conflict. When someone gossips about you, silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you have no interest in entering rooms built on insecurity. When someone challenges you, provokes you, questions your worth, silence is the wall that keeps their chaos out of your mind. There's a kind of dignity that cannot be faked. It's found in the person who does not flinch when insulted, who does not stumble to explain themselves to those committed to misunderstanding them, who does not shrink just because someone else is loud. This is not apathy. This is spiritual clarity. A knowing that not every flame needs your breath. A confidence that not every battle deserves your sword. The Stoics taught that one of the greatest signs of inner strength is the ability to remain unmoved in the face of provocation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to expect rudeness, ignorance, and selfishness, not to be surprised by it, but to prepare for it. And when it came, he did not meet it with fire. He met it with stillness. Because silence is not the absence of response. It is a response that says, I am not on your level. It's a way of saying, I see the trap. I see the bait. And I choose not to bite. It's emotional discipline. And it's one of the rarest forms of self-respect. But silence also requires emotional maturity. It means being comfortable with letting people be wrong about you. It means accepting that you don't owe an explanation for every choice, every boundary, every truth. It means allowing others to spiral while you remain centered. Because the truth is, the more reactive you are, the more controllable you become. So when you choose silence, you're not giving in. You're holding ground. You're showing that your peace is not for sale. You're honoring the quiet voice within that says, I'd rather be misunderstood in peace than understood in conflict. This doesn't mean we stop speaking up when it matters. It means we stop bleeding our energy into situations that don't. It means we protect our voice by not throwing it into rooms where no one's listening with love. Remember this, reacting is easy. Staying silent takes strength. And the person who can master their silence can master their life. Lesson 3. Detachment is not indifference. One of the most misunderstood virtues in Stoicism is detachment. People hear the word and think of coldness, emotional distance, apathy. They imagine someone disconnected from life, disconnected from love, disconnected from others. But true detachment is not the absence of care. It is the presence of clarity. It is knowing how to care deeply without losing yourself in the process. It is learning how to love without clinging, how to give without overextending, how to stay present without becoming consumed. You see, most suffering doesn't come from the thing itself. It comes from our attachment to how we expected it to be. We expect people to treat us the way we treat them. We expect outcomes to reward our effort. We expect life to unfold in the shape of our hopes. And when it doesn't, we don't just feel disappointment. We feel betrayal. That's not pain. That's attachment. And it can become a silent enemy to your peace. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. Epictetus taught that freedom is found in letting go of things that are not within your control. Detachment, in that sense, is not giving up. It is letting go of your illusion of control. It is choosing peace over possession. It is learning to say, I will give my full presence to this moment, but I will not allow my happiness to depend on its outcome. Detachment means you can love someone and still walk away when they start to hurt your soul. It means you can work hard and still accept the result with grace. It means you can invest fully and still release when it's time to let go. This is not indifference. Indifference is numb. Detachment is aware. Indifference says, I don't care what happens. Detachment says, I care, but I won't let it destroy me. Detachment is what allows you to remain stable when life becomes unstable. It's what gives you the ability to move through loss without losing yourself. It's the quiet strength that lets you feel everything without becoming everything you feel. When you master detachment, you no longer fall apart every time something falls apart around you. You stop chasing closure from those who refuse to give it. You stop needing validation from people who cannot even validate themselves. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-correcting, because you've made peace with the only thing you can ever truly control, your inner state. So the next time life doesn't go the way you planned, pause. Feel what you need to feel, then breathe. Release the need to hold on so tightly. Loosen your grip on how it was supposed to go. And remind yourself, detachment is not losing. It is choosing to preserve your peace above all else. Leçon fort, émotionnelle discipline is self-respect. There is a quiet strength in the person who feels everything but does not act on every emotion. They do not repress what they feel, but they do not let it rule them either. This is emotional discipline, and it is one of the highest forms of self-respect. Too often, we confuse honesty with impulsivity. We think that to be authentic, we must express everything we feel, right when we feel it, in the way it first shows up. But raw emotion is not always truth. It is an impulse, a spark, not yet refined. And reacting from that raw place often causes more harm than good. The Stoics believed that to master one's emotions is not to become robotic or cold. It is to honor your inner world enough to guard its expression, to feel anger and choose not to lash out, to feel fear and still move forward, to feel sadness and not drown others in your sorrow. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength lies in your ability to pause, to step back from the wave of emotion rising within you and see it clearly before deciding what to do with it. This isn't suppression. This is leadership over the self. When you develop emotional discipline, you stop handing your power to people who know how to push your buttons. You stop letting moods dictate your actions. You stop apologizing for things you said in the heat of the moment. You become trustworthy, not only to others, but to yourself. Think about it. If your peace can be taken by one rude comment, one delay, one small disappointment, then your peace is not grounded. It is dependent, fragile, conditional. But when you anchor yourself in discipline, Your emotions no longer control your behavior. They inform it, but they do not dictate it. And that shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're not reactive. You're responsive. You're no longer constantly repairing damage caused by your own lack of control. You're building relationships, careers, and a life rooted in stability and presence. Next time an emotion surges within you, whether it's rage, jealousy, sadness, or anxiety, pause. Feel it fully, but do not obey it blindly. Ask yourself, is this response rooted in truth, or is it a storm passing through? Is this how I want to be remembered? Is this aligned with who I want to become? Emotional discipline doesn't make you less human. It makes you a wiser, stronger version of yourself, one who can carry the weight of deep feeling without collapsing under it, one who leads with presence, not pressure, one who knows how you feel is valid, but what you do with it determines your future. Lesson 5. Pausing is a power move. In a world that rewards speed, urgency, and instant replies, pausing feels unnatural. We are taught to act fast, speak quickly, and respond before the silence gets awkward. But in that silence, in that brief space between stimulus and response, lives your power. Pausing is not hesitation. It is intention. It is the moment where you reclaim yourself before the world decides who you're going to be. When someone says something disrespectful, most people react automatically. They defend, attack, explain, justify, all in a split second. But the person who pauses does something different. They hold the emotion in their hands, examine it without letting it explode, and then choose their next move. That kind of control is not repression. It is mastery. The Stoics understood that reactivity is a form of slavery, because in that state you are no longer free. You're being controlled by the outside world, by another person's words, by a situation you didn't create, by your own unfiltered impulses. But the one who pauses becomes untouchable, not because they feel nothing, but because they've trained themselves to observe before they act. A pause gives you space to ask, is this even worth my energy? Is this comment worth my peace? Is this decision coming from pressure or clarity? Pausing is a shield that protects you from saying something you'll regret, from committing to things you don't believe in, from stepping into battles that aren't even yours. It's what allows you to show up with calm when everything around you is in chaos. It's how you stop being manipulated by urgency, whether it's someone else's or your own. You don't owe anyone an instant reaction. Not in conflict, not in conversation, not in crisis. You are allowed to breathe, to reflect, to listen to your deeper self before responding. That is not delay. That is depth. Many people speak out of fear of silence, of disconnection, of being misunderstood. But those who learn to pause discover something far more valuable: clarity. And from clarity comes strength. When you pause, you move with purpose. And when your actions are rooted in purpose, they carry more weight than 100 rushed replies. If you find yourself in a heated moment, a confrontation, or a difficult choice, give yourself permission to wait. Wait 5 seconds. Take one deep breath. Let the noise settle just enough to hear your wisdom rise. And in that space, decide who you truly want to be. Because anyone can react, but it takes presence to pause. It takes strength to be still. And it takes wisdom to respond with intention instead of instinct. Pausing is not a sign of uncertainty. It is the signal of inner command. Leçon 6. You don't need to prove yourself. One of the deepest drains on our energy is the compulsion to constantly prove ourselves, to prove our worth, to prove we're enough, to prove we belong, to prove we're not what they think. But the desire to prove is often born from a wound, a subtle belief that who we are in silence is not sufficient. That unless we're constantly performing, constantly explaining, constantly justifying, we are at risk of being dismissed or unseen. This belief can become a prison. You become hyper-aware of how others perceive you. You overthink every interaction, trying to say the right thing, appear in the right light, be palatable, be accepted. But in trying to prove that you are enough, you abandon the version of you that already is. The Stoics taught that the only approval worth seeking is that of your own conscience. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that if he lived with virtue, he didn't need applause. He didn't need affirmation, because the truth was self-evident to his own soul. Trying to prove yourself often stems from being misunderstood, overlooked, or rejected earlier in life. You carry the echo of those moments and try to silence them through perfection, through success, through people-pleasing. But here is the truth. You cannot convince those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You cannot earn the love of someone who only feels powerful when you feel small. There's a moment in every strong soul's journey when they realize they no longer need to explain themselves. They no longer need to defend every boundary. They no longer need to perform respectability for those who lack respect. This is not arrogance. This is integrity. The moment you stop over-explaining is the moment you start living in alignment. You start making choices based on your inner truth, not outer validation. You'll begin to see how exhausting it was to chase everyone's approval. You'll feel your body soften in the absence of performance. You'll reclaim your energy when you stop arguing with people who were never listening from the heart. The next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause and ask, what am I trying to protect? Whose opinion am I afraid of losing? What if I trusted my own knowing instead? You are not here to perform your worth. You are here to embody it, quietly, powerfully, without needing to decorate it with explanation. Let your actions speak for you. Let your presence tell your story. Let your boundaries stand without permission slips. Because the deepest confidence doesn't shout, it simply exists. The moment you realize you have nothing to prove is the moment you become untouchable. Leçon 7. Peace is more important than being right. There is a quiet war that many people fight every day. The need to be right. Not because they are cruel or arrogant, but because their sense of identity has become entangled with their opinions. They argue not to understand, but to protect themselves. They correct others not to offer clarity, but to affirm their own intelligence. And they cannot walk away from disagreement without feeling somehow diminished. But the Stoic path teaches something radically different. It teaches that peace is a greater victory than winning an argument. That wisdom is not proven in how often you're right, but in how little you need to prove it. You see, the urge to always be right is fueled by ego, the fragile part of us that cannot tolerate being questioned or misunderstood. But truth does not need aggression. It does not need volume. It does not panic in the face of ignorance. Truth stands on its own, quietly. And when you are truly rooted in what you know, you do not fear disagreement. You do not feel the need to crush someone else's view in order to feel secure in your own. There is strength in restraint. To be in a heated moment and choose not to escalate. To know you could tear someone down and instead choose silence. To hear misinformation, even attacks, and calmly walk away. Not because you're weak, but because your peace costs more than their approval. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act out of what they believe to be true, and that arguing with them rarely changes that. Instead of spending energy convincing others, he focused on living in alignment. He understood that being right in character mattered more than being right in conversation. How many relationships have been fractured because someone couldn't let go of a point? How many beautiful moments were ruined by a single sentence that had to be said? How many days have been lost to mental battles that didn't need to happen? To protect your peace is not to surrender your beliefs. It is to elevate them above the need for conflict. It is to know that some things are worth discussing, and others are not worth disturbing your spirit for. And when you begin to choose peace over pride, everything shifts. You stop taking the bait of provocation. You stop trying to win with people who are not even playing the same game. You stop wasting your light in rooms that cannot reflect it back. Next time someone challenges you, misunderstands you, or tries to pull you into an emotional tug-of-war, ask yourself, do I need to be right, or do I need to be at peace? Because very often, trying to be right only leads you further from what truly matters. Peace isn't passivity. It's power that doesn't need to perform. It is your soul whispering, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it in this moment. And that knowing, that is freedom. Lesson 8. Silence is a strategy, not a weakness. There is a kind of silence that speaks louder than any argument. It is not the silence of avoidance, nor the silence of defeat, but the silence of mastery. When you no longer feel the need to fill every space with words, you begin to understand the strategic power of stillness. In our modern world, silence is often misunderstood. People rush to interpret it as fear, guilt, or submission. They expect a response, a defense, an explanation, and when it doesn't come, they assume they've won. But true silence is not a retreat. It is a decision, a choice to conserve your energy, protect your spirit, and engage only when necessary. The Stoics understood that speaking less was often wiser than speaking more. Seneca warned of the danger of saying too much, too quickly. Epictetus reminded us that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen more and speak with care. Because not everything needs a response, and not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. When you choose silence, you disrupt patterns. You don't feed the fire. You don't give people the reaction they were counting on. And in doing so, you protect your power, because every word you speak costs energy, and not all conversations are worthy of that cost. Silence allows you to observe, to see clearly what someone truly means, not just what they say, to let their behavior reveal itself without interference, to decide from a place of calm rather than emotional urgency. There is clarity in the quiet, and from that clarity, stronger decisions are made. Choosing silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you respect your voice enough to wait for the right moment. It means you trust that truth doesn't always need to be shouted. Sometimes it is felt in your presence, in your refusal to argue, in your ability to remain centered while others unravel. There will be times when people try to provoke you. They will test your boundaries, question your intentions, distort your words. They may even accuse you of being cold or distant for not reacting. But silence in those moments is not absence. It is wisdom. It is knowing that not every battle is worth entering, and not every attack is worth acknowledging. When you feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who doesn't truly listen, or to argue with someone committed to misunderstanding, pause. Breathe. Remember that your silence isn't empty. It is full of strength. It is the loudest declaration of inner peace. It says, I know who I am. I don't need this moment to validate me. Speak when it adds value. Remain silent when it protects your soul. Because in a world full of noise, the one who commands silence commands attention. Silence is not weakness. It is the language of the strong. Lesson 9. Your energy is your responsibility. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control what you carry. Every day, you are surrounded by people, situations, and conversations that try to pull you into their chaos. They bring urgency, drama, confusion, and pain into your space, sometimes without even realizing it. And if you are not careful, you begin to absorb it all. Suddenly, you are tired and don't know why. You are anxious and can't explain it. You are drained, not by your life, but by everything you've picked up from others. This is why one of the most sacred responsibilities you have is to protect your energy, not just your time, not just your schedule, but your inner state, your focus, your clarity, your calm. Because your energy shapes your reality, and if you let everyone else dictate it, you lose control of your life from the inside out. The Stoics taught that while we cannot control external events, we are the gatekeepers of our inner world. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And how you react is not just a matter of emotion, it is a matter of energy. Who gets it? What drains it? Where you give it without return. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not required to fix every problem that someone throws at you. You are allowed to say no, to disconnect, to step away, not because you are selfish, but because you are wise. Because you know that preserving your energy is preserving your purpose. Your energy is your life force. Where you direct it determines what grows in your life. If you spend it constantly explaining yourself to people who don't understand you, you will have none left for building the life you were meant to live. If you spend it trying to keep broken relationships together, you will starve the parts of you that are trying to heal. You are allowed to walk away from chaos without guilt. You are allowed to protect your peace, even if it means disappointing others. Because at the end of the day, no one else can manage your energy for you. Only you know what you carry. Only you feel the weight. Next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, what am I giving my energy to that isn't giving back? Whose emotions am I carrying that don't belong to me? What can I release right now, not out of anger, but out of self-respect? Choose your interactions carefully. Filter what you consume, emotionally and mentally. Create space in your day for stillness, for reflection, for recalibration. Because your energy, once spent, cannot be refunded. It must be renewed intentionally. You owe no one unlimited access to your inner world. It is sacred. It is powerful. And when you treat it that way, your life begins to reflect that same power. Lesson 10. Not everything deserves your reaction. One of the greatest forms of discipline is learning to say nothing, to watch something irritating unfold before you and simply choose not to participate, to hear a passive-aggressive comment, feel the impulse to respond, and let it pass. Not because you're weak, not because you don't care, but because you understand this simple truth: not everything is worth your energy. In every day, there are 100 small things that beg for your attention. A rude driver, a careless message, a disrespectful tone, a pointless online argument. Each one is an invitation, an opportunity to get pulled into a reaction that adds nothing to your life, yet drains something vital from you: your calm, your focus, your dignity. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress your emotions. It teaches you to rule over them, to know when they serve your highest values and when they sabotage your peace. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, he often reminded himself that others will act in ignorance, and that his duty was not to mirror their ignorance, but to remain aligned with reason. He understood that reacting to every provocation is a form of slavery, because it means your inner world is constantly controlled by external triggers. You cannot stop people from being inconsiderate. You cannot stop life from being unpredictable. But you can train your mind to respond selectively, to ask yourself, does this moment need my energy, or does it simply want it? To realize that many situations only have power if you give them power, and some moments only live longer because we feed them with attention. There is real strength in letting something slide, in choosing to be the quiet one in a loud room, in walking away from nonsense without the need to explain why. You preserve your power not by silencing others, but by refusing to let them dictate your state. This doesn't mean you allow disrespect. It means you choose your battles with care. You don't fight every war you're invited to. You don't correct every wrong statement. You don't waste sacred energy on situations that don't impact your higher path. If someone says something foolish or provocative, let them. Let the silence hold their words. Let time reveal what truth cannot force in the moment. Your restraint is not invisibility. It is self-possession. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows that not every trigger is a call to action. If you find yourself getting pulled into minor conflicts, breathe and return to yourself. Ask, what do I want to be known for? Constant reaction or consistent peace? You do not need to show up to every fire. Some things burn themselves out without your involvement. Because the strongest person in the room is often the one who says the least. Lesson 11. Emotional mastery begins with pause. There is a moment, brief, invisible but powerful, that exists between a stimulus and your response. It is that fraction of a second between someone's words and your reaction, between a trigger and your emotion. Most people live their entire lives without ever noticing this space. They react immediately, instinctively, reflexively, and then wonder why their emotions seem to control them. But within that space, if you learn to pause, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim your power. You gain perspective. You stop being a prisoner of your nervous system and become a master of your choices. The Stoics spoke often about the importance of self-command. They did not preach repression, but awareness. Emotions, they knew, are natural. Anger, sadness, fear, all arise like weather in the soul. But what matters is what you do next. And the ability to pause gives you time to ask the most important question of all: what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? This pause is not easy. It requires training, because your biology is wired to defend, to attack, to react. But your spirit, your character, your deepest value, they require something else. They require stillness. They require the maturity to feel something intensely and still choose your response carefully. When someone speaks to you harshly, the urge to snap back is strong. When something goes wrong, the desire to blame or panic comes quickly, but with practice, you can meet these urges with space. You can breathe before you speak. You can notice the surge of emotion and observe it without being swept away. And in that observation, you regain clarity. The pause is where your freedom lives. Because without it, you are simply reacting to the world. But with it, you become a deliberate creator of your inner world. You choose what enters. You choose what stays. You choose what shapes you. This is emotional mastery. Not the absence of feeling, but the ability to guide feeling with intention. And it all begins with that small, sacred pause. The next time your heart races, or your thoughts tighten, or your hands clench, do not rush. Feel the tension. Let it come. And then wait. Let the wave rise, crest, and begin to fall. Do not speak from the height of it. Speak from the calm that follows. You will find that most situations do not require your reaction, only your presence. You will notice how much pain is avoided when you give yourself permission to wait, and you will begin to trust yourself more. Not because you are perfect, but because you are grounded. Pause isn't weakness. It is inner sophistication. It is what allows you to stand in the middle of chaos and not lose yourself. It is what gives you the grace to respond without regret. And in a world that glorifies immediacy, your pause will become your quiet rebellion. Lesson 12. You don't have to attend every conflict. You're invited. Every day, life sends out invitations. Some are invitations to beauty, to presence, stillness, gratitude. But many others are invitations to conflict. A sarcastic comment, a tone of disrespect, a misunderstanding laced with accusation. These moments are like doors flung open, waiting for you to step through and engage in battle. But the Stoics taught us something liberating. You are not obligated to enter every war that calls your name. You can see the door and simply walk past it. You can hear the provocation and respond with silence. You can feel the emotion rise and still not act upon it. This is not avoidance. This is sovereignty. Because true freedom begins when you realize that your attention is not free. Your energy is a currency, and every argument costs something. It may cost your clarity, your sleep, your peace, or your self-respect. And not every cost is worth it. When someone tries to pull you into their storm, it is often because they have not learned how to regulate their own chaos. They want a reaction to confirm their worldview, to validate their pain, or to project their unrest. And when you react, when you match their chaos, you don't bring calm, you just add more noise. Walking away is not weakness. It is wisdom in action. It is choosing to stay grounded in what you value, rather than getting lost in someone else's emotional spiral. It is knowing that peace is not given to you by others. It is protected by you, moment by moment. There will be people who test this, who push, provoke, prod. They will mistake your stillness for cowardice. Let them. Because the truth is, the one who stays calm holds the power, not the one who shouts the loudest, not the one who insists on being right, but the one who sees the invitation to conflict and chooses not to show up. Imagine how many hours of your life could be saved if you stopped attending every argument. Imagine the emotional space you'd reclaim if you didn't chase every correction, every explanation, every defense. You do not need to prove yourself to people who are not open to seeing you clearly. You do not need to explain your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. When the tension rises, when the bait is dropped, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth entering? Or can I let it pass like a cloud across the sky? What will this cost me? And will I still be proud of my response when the moment has passed? The strongest version of you doesn't fight everything. It observes, evaluates, and decides wisely, because your peace is not for sale, your energy is not for waste, and your life is too short to keep showing up to battles that do not serve your growth. In a world that constantly tries to provoke, to agitate, to demand a piece of your attention, the greatest act of defiance is to remain still, to choose peace when war is easier, to stay rooted when the wind pulls in every direction, to protect your mind as a sacred space rather than a battlefield for every passing storm. You were never meant to respond to everything. You were never meant to carry the weight of every insult, every misunderstanding, every chaotic voice. That is not strength. That is surrendering your life to noise. The Stoics did not seek a life without emotion. They sought a life where emotion served reason, where the soul was guided by principles, not impulses. And that life begins with the courage to pause, to choose, and sometimes to walk away. Each of these 12 lessons is not about silence alone. They are about alignment, about returning to yourself, about guarding the energy that fuels your clarity, your purpose, your joy. Because once you learn to stop reacting to everything around you, you begin to live from something deeper within you. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every opinion deserves your reply. And not every reaction defines your worth. The strongest version of you is not the one who wins every argument. It is the one who no longer needs to. So protect your peace. Value your calm. Let your stillness speak louder than your defense. Because, in the end, the one who masters their reaction masters their life.